Okay. Hello, everyone. Good evening, or good morning or afternoon, depending on when you're listening to this. Welcome to the 73rd of hopefully many episodes of Bard Advice, a D&D slash TTRPG slash nerd anime sports podcast where I, Charles Chaz Yazik, the DM, the Bard, however you may know me, do my best to answer any questions that you might have regarding any of those topics. I hope that everybody's doing well. As just sort of a preliminary warning, I'm not going to be going as late as I normally do. Not that I go too terribly late, but usually I go like 6-7 minutes. I'm going to try to cut it a little shorter this evening just because I've got a long day of stuff tomorrow. So I don't want to spend too much time in post on this. So just a little bit of a warning there to everybody. But we're here. We're going to do the pod. We've got some questions this evening. As we like to do at the top of the show is remind everybody of the email for the show, which is bardadvice@gmail.com. It also looks like bardadvice. Please send any questions, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques, etc. over to bardadvice@gmail.com. Your questions and comments help fuel the show, so it's much appreciated if you send any of those things over there. If you want to get some merch, you can do so over at manshorts.com, or more notably over at krakendice.com. Get yourself a pair of one of our 3 limited sets. The 4th will be coming soon. And if you'd like to contribute to anything that I'm doing musically, you can do so directly via PayPal, Cash App, or Venmo, all of which are Yazik, Yahzick. We also, at the top of the show, like to thank all of our members, patrons, super chatters. Thank everybody for liking, commenting, subscribing. Remind you to turn on notifications and rate the podcast on your respective platforms. Okay, so here we go. Happy Memorial Day as well, I suppose. I guess that this is technically Memorial Day weekend. It's odd this year because typically my birthday's on the 31st, and throughout my life, I've had a lot of birthdays on like Sunday, Saturday, and this one's like, what, is it in the middle of the week? Oh no, I guess it's Friday. Well, what am I saying? Geez, it feels like a shorter gap between 25 and 31, but I guess it's a week. Okay, so for Art Corner this week, before we get into the questions, I wanted to note everybody to check out this new documentary that PBS is producing. I'm not sure if they're working with the BBC or if it's the BBC on PBS or what, but it's called Pompeii: The New Dig. My wife and I have just started watching it. It's new. It's just begun airing. It's pretty crazy in an incredibly interesting way. They've unearthed like pretty much the city, and they're going through it, and it's really just astonishing to think about like what the people went through as far as not just the disaster, but just their lives in general and all these new, cool, interesting things they're finding out about these older cultures. It's a really cool, interesting watch, so I highly recommend it. And one last thing before we get into questions on Art Corner, just wanted to show everybody the album cover for Math Lord, which is the concept album that I've been working on with my friend Songaria for about 6 months or so. It's actually pretty impressive that we've been managed to get 24, 25 songs together in that time. But we're knocking on the door of the end of that project as far as finishing it up. I imagine that within the next few weeks, certainly within the month, we'll be looking to release that. So I'll keep everybody abreast as to like when those actual release dates are, but just wanted to kind of remind everybody it's pretty cool. We made this album cover together with AI as well as our own intervention, so I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's pretty cool. And I'm not on every single song, but I'm on a lot of them, and it's a lot of rapping, so please feel free to check that stuff out when it comes out. All right, so let's get into some questions. We have some this evening that I want to get into, and as I said, we're going to try and keep it pretty close as to the hour. But let's start it off. The first question, according to the list of names, is from Cal or Calais or Calla. I always say it wrong, and I never remember what it is. I apologize. But if it makes you feel better, that's happened to me my whole life, so it's a name issue. Okay, so Calais asks, "Greetings, Chaz. I don't really like Critical Role. Besides your own content, can you recommend any D&D stream to watch or listen to? What are your favorite YouTube channels regardless of content?" Well, thank you for the question. So I'll be honest, I don't watch a lot. It's interesting. Maybe it's because I make it. I don't watch a lot of other D&D stuff. I guess that I do if I'm looking for something specific. It's really nice, but I realized this when I was thinking about how to answer this question, that I don't really consume a whole lot of like content per se on YouTube as much as I just kind of use it to listen to podcasts that I like. And so I don't watch a whole lot of like sketch comedy or like vlogs or whatever. Most of what I'm consuming when I'm on YouTube is podcast stuff. That said, I did have at least 3 channels that I recommend that you might want to check out. D&D Shorts, which is our friend Will. He's a really cool guy from Australia, and he makes lots of good content. There's Nerdarchy is another one to check out. I believe, most of they do is D&D content. I don't know if they play or not. These are mostly just like comedy or like gaming centric content channels. And then Crit Crab, which does a lot of like the stories from D&D, which is really cool. I also noted a few of the streams that I know where people are actually playing the game. Sorry, I've got like basketball on the background, where people are actually playing the game. So for those, I put down a list of High Rollers. Smosh, I know, has played at least one, if not a few campaigns. There's one called The Legends of Evantris, Dimension 20. And then there's a girl I follow on TikTok that has a group that does D&D, I think on Twitch, called D in Denial. Let me see what people in the chat are saying, actually, for some of these recommendations. Crit Crab, Dungeon Dudes, Dungeon Dad, Semi-Related Dungeons and Dweebs podcast. It's a fantasy literature pod, but they cover the core Dragonlance novels. Oh, that's cool. I bet Rigsby would love that. He's got all those books. Ox Venture, the same people for Outside Xbox, have a D&D show. They just finished the story arc with their original characters. Viva La Dirt League, yes. Thank you for saying that, because I would have forgotten it, and I'd be remiss if I did, because that troupe is a powerhouse of content. They're really funny. So definitely check out Viva La Dirt League. Harmon Quest, Deerstalker. Yeah, Deerstalker Pictures. It's not necessarily my cup of tea, but and AJ Pickett you mentioned. I'm not familiar with who that is, but any of those, I think you'd be good to go. Yeah, another for Deerstalker. I never really got into it, I guess. Complete your game for Chaosium contest. Well, good luck. Door Monster. Oh, yeah. I heard of Door Monster, too. That's true. So, yeah. I think any of those. And then as far as stuff that I watch that's not D&D related, like I said, I listen to a lot of podcasts. Mostly, if you threw a dart on any time of the week, I'm listening to Dudesy, the Basement Yard podcast, Bad Friends, although not as much as I used to with Bad Friends. I went through a period where I was listening to a lot of comedians podcasts, and I mean, and don't get me wrong, I think Bobby Lee's one of the funniest people on the planet, but I don't listen to it as much as I did. Club Shay Shay with Shannon Sharp, just because he has really interesting guests on, and he also does it reminds me of old school Rogan, where it's an actual these people sit down and have a real honest conversation. I think it's really interesting. Good Mythical Morning, those guys are great. I guess that they're pretty much sketch, but I consider them more to be a variety show. And I have to kind of be in the right mood, but I do find myself binging them. I was watching those guys back when I was making content on YouTube in 2008. So, and First Things First and Nightcap, which are both sports podcasts that I listen to. So that's mostly what I consume on YouTube that is not necessarily D&D stuff. A good comedian pod is, I don't know about that with Jim Jeffries. Yeah, and then there's the other one that's, what's the one with Dax Shepard? Armchair Expert? Is that what it's called? I've heard really good things about that. And then there's another one that I can't think of the name of that Justin has recommended to me several times. And it sounds right up my alley, because it's Will Forte, Sean Hayes, and is it Jason Bateman? If anybody knows the name of that podcast, throw it out there, because I can't remember it. But yeah, so that's the kind of stuff that I watch and listen to. And hopefully any of those recommendations by me or chat will point you into a direction of finding some new content to enjoy. Because we can only put out so much. So thank you very much for the question, Callie. Much appreciated. Let's keep moving, because we've got more questions to get to. We've got 6 more, so I want to make sure we get to them and then also have some time for chat as I keep talking. Okay, so the next question is from Harper. Hello, Jacob. Thanks for stopping by. On 4% battery, that seems crazy to me. You know, one of the guys I work with, Bobby, the other day, his phone just died, and I was just like trying to think of how that would happen. So, oh yeah, Kathleen Madigan's really funny. Okay, so the next question is from Harper, and Harper asks, howdy DM, hello from Texas. First time question here, so here it goes. Wizards of the Coast just dropped their new design on gold dragons, and it got me thinking, do you have a favorite dragon? Follow-up question, if you were a dragon, which type would you be? Thank you kindly for the skits, music, and podcast. Well, thank you, Harper. Much appreciate the question. So I'm actually surprised that I've never had a question like this, which is kind of surprising considering we've been running this pod as long as we have, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about dragons. I wrote a response to it. Chat, feel free to pop off and chat for your favorite dragons or what dragon you might see yourself as. So my favorite dragon is a blue dragon. I've always been attracted to the lightning breath. Probably subconsciously why I named my album Organized Lightning. Lightning's pretty cool. Most of the reason, by the way, that I named that album Organized Lightning is that it's based on a George Carlin joke, which is that electricity is just organized lightning. But yeah, I've always thought that the lightning breath was cool, so I was kind of drawn to the blue dragon. I remember I had a 3/5 dragon shaman who had the totem of a blue dragon, so not only did I get a lightning breath weapon, but I also got the ability to breathe underwater, which was excellent, seeing as how we were in a pirate campaign. So that was very helpful. I would say that if I were to be a dragon, I feel like I would be a metallic dragon. And when I was looking through them, I originally thought that I would be like a copper or maybe even a mercury dragon. But I think it's pretty clear I'd be a brass. So brass dragons are known for talking a lot. In fact, they're known to avoid conflict through means of talking. So they're pretty self-important. And even though I didn't get the lightning breath with brass, I do get a line of fire and a cone of sleeping gas, which is pretty cool. Plus, they're chaotic good, which is, you know, I think that's the alignment that I most relate to IRL. In real life, as they say, I'd probably consider myself to be chaotic good. Or at a minimum, you know, I try to be chaotic good. How about that? And also brass, you know, just like the idea, I played brass in, well, it's interesting. So I played saxophone through most of my career in school as a musician. And then my senior year, I played tuba. And I always feel like I related more to low brass. But saxophone's an interesting one because it's technically a woodwind, but it's also kind of a brass instrument. So, a mediator dragon. My characters tend to have silver dragon bloodlines. Peppermint dragon? Oh, that sounds fun. Now, hold on. If we can make them up, then I'm going to just be a hip-hop dragon. But brass dragon, that's pretty cool. Puff the Magic Dragon. Wait a minute. That's like a specific guy. Soft, squishy dragon. Yeah, I feel that. That's for sure. Whatever the, yeah, brass is maybe not as a physical reminiscent of me, but definitely from a personality perspective. I was looking through all of the dragons today, and how fun to look through dragons, and how strange that this is 73 episodes into a podcast about Dungeons and Dragons. This is the first question I've gotten about dragons. Although, to be fair, I don't know if I've gotten any questions about dungeons. So, Toothless, Saphira. Yeah, I was actually thinking, I thought of it today, Pirate. Are you ready? It's like brass dragon, that battle wagon. Brass dragon, bragging, that battle wagon. How about that? What if I just like remake a bunch of like famous popular hip hop songs and just rewrite them, just straight up like Weird Al, D&D, a whole a whole album of just like popular hip hop songs? That'd be fun. Might do that. Might do that. I do need to once we finish Math Lord, we're going to start working on more of like Bardcore stuff and the D&D Christmas album. So that'll be good. But yeah, so favorites of blue, and I'd probably be a brass. I think dragons are cool. Okay, so moving on. The next question. Oh, by the way, I should also say, because we've only been through 2 questions and neither of them have been Chris, but buckle up for Chris's, because there's more Chris's than usual in this episode, which is... all right, so yeah, unleash the Chris's for sure. Okay, so the first one's coming in. All right, so this next question, not D&D related, and I honestly don't have too much of a strong of opinion on it, but I think it's interesting, so we'll talk about it. We'll see what chat has to say. This question is from Chris as well, and Chris asks, in the Discord, Pirate and I, by the way, that's another Chris, got into a discussion over whether or not beans belong in chili. A few others chimed in their thoughts. I think chili con carne, no beans, and chili with beans are 2 separate types of dishes, and beans belong in chili. What do you in chat think? Alrighty, so I worked today, which is unlike most Fridays. So while I was at work, I took time to write some thoughtful answers to these questions. Let the chaos ensue. Oh no, I can't believe this. I'm definitely not watching the Dallas Timberwolves game in the corner here. All right, so let's talk about chili. So this is going to be tough, as some of you may be shocked to know. I don't eat chili. Never been a fan. But as far as whether or not beans belong in chili, it seems that it depends on where you are, right? If my research is correct, bean-free chili is more common in like the South or maybe the Southwest. Then the further north or northeast you go, you're likely to find beans in the chili. Maybe I'm ignorant to ask, but isn't this the same kind of question as like what goes in a salad? Like it seems kind of subjective. And I think the big problem we're having here is that it assumes that there's like a standard or like an OG chili. But to me, it seems like it's up to the maker of the chili. I don't know how beans would lessen it, but I don't eat it. So then again, I don't know. Let's see what people are saying. There's no beans in chili for sure. Lots of no beans in chili. Well, there's a beans belong in chili. Apparently I shouldn't be putting corn in it. I think you can call it chili with or without beans. It just depends on your personal taste. Yeah, and that's what I read mostly when I looked into this online debate that apparently has been going on for probably as long as the internets have existed. So, like the 2 dishes concept, but I like lots of veggies. If it's the main dish, yes, beans. If it's a condiment, accessory, chili dog, chili fries, then no beans. Oh, that's an interesting take. Fun fact, in the Midwest, you can have 7 different salads and a potluck, and none of them with lettuce. I totally believe that. Personally, I love beans and chili. So, I don't know, it seems about split down the middle, which, again, that was another thing that I found online when I was looking into it and people arguing. I think at the end of the day, it's just like whatever you want to do, man. It's like that argument about like whether a hot dog's a sandwich. It's like, does it really matter, though, at the end of the day? Like, if you're going to enjoy the hot dog, you can kind of make whatever food you want to, you know? I mean, like, I think about, like, remember in The Breakfast Club when Ali Sheedy's character has that sandwich that's like pixie sticks and cereal? That's insane. If you were to ever, like, offer that up as a sandwich to people, people would think you were crazy. But that's what she ate, and it's a sandwich. So what are you going to do about it? Standard Cincinnati chili had no beans. Beans are also a great way to add volume without adding a lot of cost. Yeah, I was going to say, aren't beans pretty cheap? It seems like you can get a can of beans for like $1 and then just throw them in there. That's pretty good. Beans would make it easier for your digestion. That's true. It's a third chili option. Yeah. Well, and I've heard too that Cincinnati's like serious about their chili. So they probably have like their own thing going on where you would bring them something that seemed relatively normal or standard where you were from, and people would think that you were crazy. But hey, you know what else it's like? It's like sweet tea not being a thing in other places but the South. I learned that when I was like 18 or 19. We were out somewhere. We were out in like, I think New Mexico. And this was, 20 years ago. But I ordered a sweet tea, and you'd have thought that I asked for all the food on the menu or something. The look that this lady gave me was just like, "What are you talking about?" And then her response as like an alternative was like, "Oh, well, we have tea, so I can bring you tea and sugar." And I was like, "No, that's not gonna work because you can't add it once it's cooled down. Just give me a Coke." It's like whatever. It was a very like it was a reckoning moment for me to be like, "Whoa, dude, there's no sweet tea. Other places don't have sweet tea." Oh yeah, well, welcome to that knowledge. That's not like a standard thing. You can go up, like if you're up in the Northeast or something and you ask for tea, you get tea. Now, maybe times have changed with more people on the internet and communicating. Maybe sweet tea is more readily available throughout the U.S. But in my experience and from what I understand, sweet tea, not necessarily everywhere. There's a sweet tea and then there's Southern sweet tea, twice the sugar. Yeah, no doubt. Most definitely. Still can't get over the fact that Americans drink tea cold. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I enjoy tea if it's cold sweet tea or if it's hot, regular tea like black teas. I need to get back into tea, honestly. It's been a while since I've really drank it a lot. No sweet tea blasphemy. Yeah, I feel you. That's how I felt. I was like, "What are you talking about?" I was as confused as the lady was. When I said it, I was like, "Yeah, can I get a sweet tea?" And she's like, "We have peach tea." That's what she said. She's like, "We have peach tea." I was like, "That's not sweet tea." Sun tea. I don't know what that is. Sweet tea is still uncommon in SoCal unless going to a southern place. Learning to light sweet tea was one of the best things to come from me living in North Carolina. Yeah, that'll do it. Full pound of sugar to 4 gallons of tea. Yikes, dude. Yeah, we added a lot of sugar to the lemonade at Chick-fil-A. And I guess the sweet tea, too. I don't know. If you're from the South and you make it a lot, you just kind of get used to the idea. I imagine somebody that's never had it would see the process of making it and be like, "What are you doing? Are you trying to kill people?" This is way too much sugar. Nobody can handle all this. All right. So, brewed in a glass jar in the sun. Okay, I can deal with that. As long as it's hot when you mix in the sugar. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't have too much of a dog in the fight on the chili debate. It seems kind of divided down the middle. It seems like there are people that like it with or without. And I'm here to tell you, folks, you have your chili however you want to have your chili. And if you want to call it chili or you don't want to call it chili, that's your prerogative too. Just enjoy your meals, I guess. So, thank you for the question, Chris. Moving on because we've got more. This next question is from Amanda. Not a Chris, but more Chris's to come. And Amanda asks, "Hey Bard, who was your favorite BBEG in a campaign that you have either run or been a player in?" Thank you for the question, Amanda. I was looking into mentally, thinking back, we'll say, on my career as a D&D player. And honestly, I think that my favorite BBEG has been Rathos from the We Play. Which, spoiler alert, if nobody's watched the We Play, or if you haven't watched the We Play, you might not know what I'm talking about. But Ethan and I were discussing it recently. He came into my shop, I think like last week. And I think that with that campaign, we did kind of paint ourselves into a finale corner as far as the timing and it was kind of rushed there at the end. And as a result, that final boss battle wasn't maybe as epic as it could have been. Certainly not as drawn out as it could have been. But it was, I think, a pretty awesome ending either way. I love the lore of Rathos. Like, he's this evil water god monster from another plane. And he's essentially trying to aquaform the earth and, turn it into a habitable environment for himself and, I guess, his minions. And getting to be on the other side of that character with Verena was really fun. And this is actually probably why it's my favorite, because you mentioned as a player or as a DM, not necessarily that I was a DM, but I kind of got to see both sides of that villain before and after we were fighting it. So I really love the 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 idea of Rathos. And then I already see comments, people saying Barry. Don't worry, that's coming up. So berries, plus I said plus anytime we run into an evil berry, it's all fun. It's a fun time. The berries on our playthrough, on the playthroughs that we have on the channel, the Airships of Nuada campaign and the We Play campaign, those berries are allies, or at a minimum, neutral. But evil berries are very much like Barry from the D&D edition videos, and in fact, that character isn't inspired by Ethan. It's inspired by berries. by Ethan's, in every campaign, Ethan has a berry, and a lot of times they're evil, not always. But yeah, Ethan is actually like a really kind and forgiving and generous DM, which I think makes it more fun that the Barry character from the episodes is like a total tool because, Ethan's so cool and we have fun with it. Like I've liked being able to see him in the last. He moved closer to my side of town, so he's been in the shop once or twice in the last few weeks, and so it's been cool to see him and chat about it. Don't mean the Whaleberry. Yeah, definitely not. Not Whaleberry or Mageberry from the We Play campaign. Although I don't remember if I don't remember if he was a bad guy or not. I don't think so. I think he was okay. I think he was on the level. Sorry, getting distracted by this. The Timberwolves and Mavs are playing, and man, it's a shame because the Timberwolves were up by like 15 points, and Kyrie Irving seems to be going bananas right now. So we're gonna see how that series ends up. I've got a question about that too that I'll get to. But yeah, so that's my favorite BBEG is Rathos. Very cool. That was real fun, that campaign. And he was good in the We Play. Okay, cool. Thunder. Yeah, it's unfortunate about the Thunder. That was a disappointment. But I will say this, and I'll say it later too, but they're a young team. They've got plenty of years ahead of them as far as championships, so they'll be fine. Thunder, they've got a bright future, that team. So, all right, moving on to the next question. Thank you for that one, Amanda. This next question is from Chris. We're back to Chris, and Chris asks, "Hi, Chaz. Hope all is going well with you and yours. It seems like a lot, if not most of the problems at the table can be solved with either open communication or the DM putting their foot down and saying no to players. Why do you think there is such a disconnect among groups with voicing their concerns?" Thank you for the question, Chris. And chat, feel free to put your opinions in as to what you think the issue is here. I found myself writing a bit of a monologue on my thoughts just in general about this, not just with communication with D&D, but communication in general. So I'll read through them, and then we can talk a little more in specifics about that. So I think communication is really hard, just at a base level, right? I struggle with communication, and I talk more than anybody I know. Brass Dragon. Public speaking is the #1 fear among humans, ranked higher than death. And even speaking your mind around friends and loved ones can be nerve-wracking. So I think that there's some reasons, some deep-seated reasons for that. I'm a believer that most people carry trauma. Many do so without even realizing it. The amygdala, the part of the brain associated with fear response, it kind of just trains itself. And we don't always have control over that training. In fact, for most of our early lives, we have no control. So our amygdala is just learning stuff, fear response. And so as a result, I think many of us have triggers, or rather behaviors or things that we dislike that activate an emotional response. All of that's to say that I think most people want to avoid conflict, right? They want to avoid conflict even at the expense of repressing their feelings. They don't want to disappoint or anger or cause drama. Many of us convince ourselves that avoiding a potential conflict is a better route than expressing our feelings. Because conflict sucks, even if it's all in your head. which is where it would be, because that's where your amygdala is. So, I think that a lot of it is that. I think a lot of it just comes down to, like, it's hard to communicate your emotions with people. It's hard to communicate your feelings without coming off a certain type of way. And it's like with communication in general, see, that's what's nice about this podcast, is that at least from like a talking standpoint, it's just very one-sided. The thing is, when you're having a conversation with people, it's like everything that's said, there's an opportunity that one or other of the person is going to like trigger something in the other one. It can happen at any time. So, and it might be on some stuff that you don't even know. That's what I mean. Like, so much of that stuff is instilled at you at a young age. So the idea, I think, for most people to kind of like stand up and assert themselves among even friends is not easy. It's not an easy thing to do. And I'll tell you what, it's way easier to just like, I'll get over it. So, yeah, and not just with D&D. I think that's true of the planet, right? Like I've always thought that from a young age. I've always like just not understood the concept of like war and just like hatred in general for people that are, you know, for other people that are different than you for whatever the reason may be. I've never really understood it. But unfortunately, it's not that easy, because I think that if it were easy to communicate, we probably wouldn't have war, you know? So I think that just in general, it's a hard thing to do. And then there are other variables that exacerbate that, especially like your relationship with these people, whether or not they're strangers, what kind of rapport you have with them, what kind of history you have with them, not only like on a personal level, but like on a playing level. So there's all kinds of stuff. Let me see what some of the people in chat are saying. Most people, especially those, tend to be socially awkward and passive. People don't want to hurt their friends' feelings and cause a rift. I think people would prefer to avoid conflict than deal with confrontations, so they just leave rather than talk. From personal experience, sometimes it's hard to tell family now. Feel like I'm disappointing them. Yeah, I feel that. Public speaking a lot. Yeah, everybody does. It's the number one. It's like 75%. The fact that it's higher than death is like astonishing. In holistic medicine, fear and anger is held in the throat. It's a reason why it's hard for people to communicate. Oh, interesting. It's difficult when you finally found a D&D group to play with something to say they might not like. 90% of these, I'm having a problem at my table problems are really solved by just stop being so passive and say this to your table. Yeah, and I struggle that with myself, by the way. Even as somebody who talks a lot, I struggle with asserting myself and just like saying the thing or asking for help or saying no. And I think that it's just kind of different for everybody as to like their own like internal emotional journey with that stuff. So, conflict-free game. Where would the stakes of consequences be? Well, it's certainly not a conflict-free campaign, but, you know, you would hope that you would be able to enjoy the game without conflict among the players. Tell me something you hate, and I will show you someone that likes that. Yeah. I mean, everything is really subjective in that way. That's part of the issue, too. I made a TikTok about that recently because there was this person made a video where they were like, you know, I don't understand. Why can't we all just agree that like there's good people and bad people? And it's like, well, the problem is that we can't all agree on what good people are good and what bad people and what people are bad. You know what I mean? So it takes a great deal of courage to stand up to enemies, but an even greater deal of courage to stand up to your friends. My life has been filled with so much trauma that nothing rattles me anymore. Wow, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, I mean, everybody's different with like what they go through as well as how they deal with it and how they function. So I'm always a believer that honesty is the best policy, but it's not always the easiest one. In fact, the truth is rarely easy. And so I think that you just kind of have to, as an individual, you know, weigh those things out and take a little more time to consider asserting yourself just across the board. Because I do think I'm not sure who was it that made the point earlier. Oh, it was Flint. Most people that play D&D are like socially awkward. That's true. That's just kind of like a trait of like the nerd culture. Not obviously everyone, but by and large, socially awkward people, that's how we were kind of attracted to these hobbies in the first place. And so I think we've spoken ad nauseum on this podcast about like session zeros and setting expectations and stuff. And so I think that a lot of that can be kind of guided by the DM as to like harvesting an environment that are harboring an environment. I don't know if either of those is correct, but nurturing an environment maybe of just like being open and communicating as much as possible, because that's gonna, it can lead to resentment if it's something that you just are like, well, not a big deal, and then like 3 months into the campaign it becomes like a screaming match. You want to try to avoid those as much as possible. So I think just talking about it is important. If you resolve and be open and transparent with your table, it really becomes remarkably easy to say, this is causing a problem for me. Be honest to communication problems with people overall. Yeah, no problem. Fostering. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Rocco. That's exactly the word that I was thinking of that couldn't. Fostering an environment of good and open communication. It's important. If issues aren't brought up in the long run, the game will sour. Yeah, most definitely. And I was just thinking about that because that's the Seinfeld episode, the Serenity Now episode, right? When the guy's like, Serenity now, insanity later. And it's like, yeah, there's truth to that. Like, obviously, you don't want to bring up everything. You don't want to be like Jim Carrey and Liar Liar and just like totally go the opposite direction. But I think as often as you can, just like try and be honest with yourself and the people around you. And when it comes to your friends or family or your party members or teammates, having that good expectation set early will, I think, empower people to be more likely to step forward and say that stuff. So, let's see. But if insanity now, does that mean serenity later? Well, I don't know. That depends. You got me thinking like when I was watching that Space-Time documentary. Just like, head explosion. So, stop and think how it affects others, since it typically doesn't bother me. And that's a thing, too. There are people who are kind of like, I don't want to say calloused over, but maybe just kind of like numb to a lot of stuff, where they're just like, it doesn't bother me. You have to keep in mind that not everybody is you. And whether that's a question of like strength or whatever it is, like everybody's different. And everybody has their own demons that they're dealing with. And so it's just keeping in mind of like, I don't know, it's like the golden rule. I've always tried to live by that, right? Like treat other people how you want to be treated. I don't think you can really go wrong there, unless, you're a psycho. Ultimately, these RPGs are group storytelling, and not everyone reads the same stories. Like a book club, maybe not all the players are best to stay for that campaign. Yes. And a lot of that, I think, can be handled in that session zero, in that expectation conversation of, same reason a lot of people who want to teach, too many people issues. Yeah, it's true. It's I think if you just try to be honest and kind, work hard and be nice to people, treat other people how you want to be treated, I think those rules can apply across the board. And in D&D, it's just a matter of like setting those expectations right out of the gate so that moving forward it's not going to be an issue. So, but that's enough on that question. Thank you, Chris, for the question. That was interesting and fun to discuss. And let's keep moving. The next question is from another Chris, from Pirate Chris. And Pirate asks, hello, O Master of Merriment, bestower of bardic advice, fabulous fighter of Faerun, devoted and dashing druid of the dancing forest, the captivating cleric of the coast, the personable paladin of perception, and finally, the wizard of the web. In honor of Puffy Cheeto feeling like she survived an apocalypse after her 5 days without power. Oh yeah, I saw that you got your power back finally. Thank goodness, I'm glad. This rogue thief archaeologist has but one question for you. The year is 2077, and the bombs have dropped all over the world. Who is in your vault with you, and what is your vault number? Also, I ran out of buzzwords to describe you as all of the classes in D&D. It's also 1:45 a.m. on a Tuesday. Well, thank you very much for the question, Pirate, and I relate to that hard. 1:45 a.m. on a Tuesday, you could probably find me editing or writing something at that point. So, all right, well, let's talk about it. So, as I've said before, I'm not the biggest Fallout fan, but I'm kind of like familiar with the lore a bit. And so, from what I understand, I don't know if I would necessarily get to choose my vault number, but assuming that I was able to, I'd probably be vault number 1337. And I would hope that my wife and the rest of my loved ones and friends would be there, but knowing my luck, I'd be trapped there with like 99 people that are like me. Just like loud, artistic, self important chips on our shoulders, brass dragons, sealed together as an experiment to see how artists would save and or rebuild the world or something. I don't know. I can't imagine. It's also it's totally plausible that I would have, the the experiment going on in my vault. I would certainly have no like say in. So could just end up being something crazy where it's like see how many radishes they can eat or something. But vault 3.5. More importantly, what's the experiment in your vault? Yeah, I think that that's what it would be. It'd be more of like a social experiment where they were like, okay, well, what if everybody in the vault was like an artist? What does that world look like? What does that like post-apocalyptic world look like? Vault 31, Vault 3.14. Wait a minute, what's going on? Won't be wherever that is, but we do have a plan. We just talked about Chile. Yeah, would have the Manshorts crew with me? Well, yeah, of course. I mean, if I had the choice, I mean that's an easy one. If I could choose who was in the vault with me, it would just be like my wife, certain members of my family, certain friends, and I guess at that point you're just kind of like creating your own little like quote unquote utopia, if there were such a thing. Everyone is a DM but no players. That'd be interesting. Or everybody's players and no DM. What would they do? Just talk about their characters. 6942, but I suspect there's something horribly wrong with the universe. 42. 8675309. Okay, now we're just naming numbers. You're a DM with no players. Really? I'm sure you could find a game somewhere. Go on Roll20 or something. Wouldn't have us in the vault too? Oh, well, I mean, obviously, any bar dad or bardette or any follower or fan of the Bar Device or Manshorts channel is certainly welcome. But these vaults can only hold so many people, right? So maybe just like the chat. You know what I mean? Vault 101. What's going on in Vault 101? Did they renew for a second season already? I think they did. I think we talked about that. Or the Vault AI is the DM and you're forced to solve its puzzles to get food. That would be terrible. I wonder about that. I wonder about the future of like AI DMs, and if for no other reason than like a lot of people not just not wanting to take on the job, how many groups would eventually, but there are probably already some now doing it, but within a couple of years it's going to get more and more human, at least in how it feels and operates. So be interested to see how many people are using AI DMs. I refuse to join any club that would have me as a member. Yeah, it's Groucho. Season 2 was greenlit within the first week. Yeah, I thought that was right. Yeah, so 1337. I don't know enough about the vaults that already exist, but I'm sure that most of them are undesirable. So, had to put everybody on a timer. Oh my gosh, 15 players. Yeah. That sounds like a timer's necessary. Just get you one of them little hourglasses from like Scattergories or something. Use that. Just like everybody's got a minute. Spellcasters, you should already know what you're casting. So. Refuse. Oh, yes, and I had forgotten to mention that earlier. I did see somebody posted the link to the Discord in the chat. If you want to join the Discord, please do so. We just chat in there and share D&D memes and stuff, and there's like an art corner in there, so told everybody to roll before it was their turn. Yeah, get your rolls out of the way. I've been in those kind of scenarios too, where there's just like so many people and you're in combat and it's like you got like 10, 12 players and then there's like, 10 to 15 enemies. That's a dummy initiative. We, in fact, the other day, recently in our Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough, ran into a real mess of initiative where it was like stretched off the screen. That was absolutely out of control. But yes, as we can see there in the chat, they've posted the link to the Discord, so that's appreciated. And if you want to join that, please do so, because like I said, we chat in there, or I do, at least when I'm able to. So thank you for the question, Pirate. That was fun. We do have one more question, and then we're going to get into some chat where we'll just kind of chat around. And then next time we'll be doing a birthday cast, so that'll be fun. And I did mention that we were going to talk about basketball earlier. This is a basketball question. So here is this last one of the evening. It's from Dennis. And Dennis asks, "Hey Charles, just started listening to the pod on one... excuse me, let's start that over. Hey Charles, take 3. Hey Charles, just started listening to the pod, and on one of the recent episodes I listened to, I heard you're a sports fan. Yep. Since the Thunder have been eliminated, who do you think will be victorious in the West and face the Celtics? Or perhaps the Pacers? Thanks for the content, and I hope you make that This Is Why Nerds Should Like Sports video. It's needed, and I'd show it to my party. Thanks again." Well, thank you for the question, Dennis. First and foremost, before we get into the actual playoffs that are happening, right now we're like 3 minutes left in the third, or the fourth, rather. So I am going to make that video. In fact, I wrote it today. So it's all, well, not 100%, but it's pretty much done. And so I'm going to try in the next week or two to put something together for that, just because I think that it's fun and it's needed. And I think that there's a bigger crossover there than a lot of people realize. And try and encourage some people to check out sports, because it's cool to talk about sports. So let's talk about the playoffs. So as we can see here, we are down to the final 4 teams in the league. We've got in the West the Dallas Mavericks and the Minnesota Timberwolves, which that game is on right now. And then the Boston Celtics and the Indiana Pacers in the East. The Celtics are already up 2-0 in that series, and the Mavs are already up 1-0 in the series. We're going to find out whether it's 2-0 or 1-1 in a few minutes, I guess. So I wrote some notes about it. As I mentioned earlier in the pod, it was disappointing to see the Thunder go home. That team has a lot of talent, and those guys are young, so they'll have plenty of good years and championship opportunities in their future. The Mavs have done almost exactly what I said they wouldn't do. I made a TikTok a few months ago about how I don't think that Luka is deserving of the MVP because, I have my reasons. But one of the things I said was that they were like 8th in the West at the time, and I said as a joke on the video, like, well, maybe they'll finish like 4th or 5th in the East and shock everybody. And here we are in the Western Conference Finals, and I think if they can stay consistent, Kyrie knows what it is already. He's been there, so they probably have the best chance at getting to the finals. But then after seeing what they did to the Nuggets, it's pretty impossible to count out Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves. On the Eastern side, Celtics they've already won the first 2 games against Indiana, but the Pacers were down 2-0 against the Knicks and came all the way back. I will say that I've said before, the Celtics, I think, are the Ravens of the NBA, meaning that like this is their year, this is their time to shine, and their year to do it. If they're going to do it, if they're going to get a chip, it's got to be now. And if they lose to the Pacers, that might be the biggest choke season in NBA history. And that team will certainly be broken up if they don't at least get to the finals. Certainly not if they win, but if they lose the finals, they still might get broken up, just because it's like, how many times are you going to run this back? I've said this is Boston's championship to lose, but after seeing Jaylen Brown drop 40 last night, it's hard to not back them as the favorite. So at this point, I think it's probably going to be Mavs and Celtics in 6. The Timberwolves kind of have the same thing as the Thunder going on, right? Where they've got, like, they're not as young as the Thunder, but they're pretty young, that squad, and they've got really good rapport with one another. You know, I think that Anthony Edwards and that whole team has had an outstanding season. Even if they were to get swept by the Mavs, I would still applaud a very successful season on their part, and they will definitely be back. I think for years to come, they will be a force to be reckoned with in just the playoffs in general. But I think that, you know, experience matters. I think that that's one of the reasons that the Thunder weren't strong enough, because these guys like Luka's what, 6 years in? Kyrie has been doing it for to what, 10 or 15? So maybe even longer. And more importantly, he's won a championship. So Kyrie is a guy that knows what it takes. And that kind of stuff matters, because these guys are all so talented. When you get to the end like this, when you get to the finals, you're really just like splitting hairs. It's just these small differences because they're all so skilled. It's these little things like experience and leadership and, you know, how clutch you are. I'm looking at you, Jason Tatum. Like, you're going to need to do some clutch stuff if you're going to do this, because if it is the Mavs, it's not going to be easy. It'd be easier on the Celtics if it were the Timberwolves, but it's not going to be easy if it's the Mavs. So y'all better figure it out and bring one home for Boston, because the team is so stacked at this point, you really should have one. So that's my answer on that. Celtics and Mavs in the final, Celtics in 6. We'll see. I'm not necessarily a Boston fan, but I just think that, you know, I like Jaylen Brown a lot. I've never been a huge Jason Tatum fan, but I really like Jaylen Brown. And especially since he got snubbed from NBA All-First Team, that stinks. But I think they deserve it. So we'll see. We'll see if they can pull it off. But the Pacers might shock the world now. They've got the fundamentals down, and Pascal Siakam's a championship winner himself. So. Recently moved from Houston to Dallas. He lost your D&D Shadowrun group of 8 years. Been 6 months, and I'm sorry to hear that. Well, you know, you're always welcome to check out stuff online as to, like, finding games. And I'm not sure if I had read it correctly, but I thought I saw somebody saying something about doing a game in the Discord. So join the Discord. Hop in. We are officially in chat, and we don't have to talk about basketball anymore, if and y'all don't want to. I know that not everybody here's a basketball fan, certainly not as much as I am, but maybe after you watch my video about why nerds should like sports, maybe you'll hop in and enjoy the sports with me, because it's fun to talk about, and there's like it's got its own fandoms and stuff. So what do we want to talk about with chat, folks? What do we got? Morgan Spurlock. Whoa, hold on. Is he the Supersize Me guy? Don't know why I love in person. No, it's understandable. I think, Danny, a lot of people prefer in person to online, if you can do it. The problem is that it's like, you know, it's tough. Scheduling. You know the issues. That's really sad to hear. Good thing of the week? Yeah, let's do good things of the week. I was actually just going to ask that. What is everybody's good thing of the week? My good thing of the week. Let's see. I got to work on my gratitude if I can't think of a good thing this week. I guess my good thing of the week is the progress that we've made on the Math Lord album, because we got a lot done just in the last couple of days that were really, I think, integral in like finishing up this album and getting all the pieces done. So it's like a rock, hip-hop, electronica, space opera thing. So I think that's one of the good things. And then we're going to be doing a baby shower for my sister-in-law tomorrow, so that'll be nice. And what else? It's the end of the week. That's true. That's a good thing of the week. You prefer online over in person. You could play D&D and don't have to wear pants. Yeah, I could see that. Finally, it's tough too, especially if you come from the era where it was like pre-online. I mean, I guess that the internet's existed for quite a while, but you certainly can play D&D online a lot more effectively now than you could even 10 years ago, let alone 20. So it's understandable that you prefer to be in person. Finally got a GPU upgrade. Nice. That's nice. That always feels good. Played a bunch of video games. Nice. That's good to get some relaxation in. It's important. Good thing of the week is twofold. Got a new 2008 GMC Envoy. Working on it for a field truck. And next project is probably taking me to the UP in Michigan. Interesting. You know, I lived up there. I never went to the UP. I kind of regret that. We should have gone up there. It'd have been cool to like maybe see the Aurora Borealis. I've not ever seen that. New vape pen came today. Nice. Binge John Wick. You know, I've never seen any of those. Which is weird because I love Keanu Reeves, but I don't know. I'm not really like a huge action guy unless we're talking like classic action stuff like the 80s. Good thing it's a long weekend. Oh no, a root canal. That sucks. Well, best of luck on that. I wouldn't wish tooth pain on my worst enemy. Oh, well, thank you, Ruby. Binged Mary and George. Oh, yeah. Did you like it? Isn't it crazy? I couldn't believe it was real. I was like, there's no way. And I'm like reading through it like, yeah, this is pretty real. It's like, obviously they took some artistic license with some stuff, but it's pretty just like accurate history. It's very interesting. And we're watching another one now, too, about Catherine Medici, which is another one on Stars. It's interesting. So one thing better online is virtual tabletops. Don't need a fortune for endless crafting to make a cool table. Don't have time to build all the maps in D20. Yeah, I can hear that. The Gloucester cheese roll is Monday. Wow, do tell. Hiawatha National Forest of the Huron Manistee National Forest is where the project is located. That's cool. That's fun. I bet it's beautiful up there. If you live in Dallas, you happily run a game for you. Oh, well, thank you. That's very kind of you. I'm in Florida myself, but I do have family in the Texas area. Just got here, so apologize if it was covered already. Is update on the not at the moment. Unfortunately, I don't have any specifics as an update to that other than I'm going to be getting the cards for it together as far as their design in the next week because we should expect them, I would imagine, within the month. At the most, like 2 months out. It'll definitely be this summer. And as soon as I know, I'm going to let everybody on here know. So I appreciate you checking in. We will be releasing those at some point. Just don't know when. But we'll definitely let people know. Matrix is binge-worthy. I don't like any of them but the first one. Turned 39 a few days ago and actually took time to low-key celebrate with coworkers and friends. Good for you. What's up with Sarah? Not much is up with Sarah. She's just taking a break. She talked about it in the gag reel a few episodes ago. Don't know why people like online play. Yeah, I think most of it is just a matter of convenience. You know, it's a lot easier, I think, depending on the circumstances, to just hop onto your computer or your phone than it is to like actually physically go to a place and take the time out of your schedule. I don't know. I think also part of that is just like post-COVID, like we've become more of a remote society. I think for sure that like once a lot of these corporations realize like, oh, wait a minute, you're telling me we can profit the same and save money on rent just having these people work from home? Okay, fine. Let's just do that. So I think that like in general, we've become more online as just like a species, as a society. So, training with the Florida woman. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I hear you. Talking to people face to face it's a different ball game. And the atmosphere is different. So, tested negative for COVID after catching it last week. Oh, well, that's good. Hopefully it wasn't too bad. I have to thank you for that retcon spell card. Past BBEGs will be making a comeback. Yeah, man. That's a fun one. Loss of rent is why so many big companies are starting to force returns. Oh, really? Mostly it's everybody responsible has too much work to do to stay afloat to get together in person. Yeah, and I think that's a big part of it. Because it's like, you know, everybody has a schedule. Everybody has like work that they're doing. But it's like, I'm home every day. So even like with Baldur's Gate 3, right? Like it's way easier for me to chisel out like 3 hours of time at home than it would be for like 3 hours to be at a place. Because there's like travel time and planning, etc. So mostly it's everybody that's 10 p.m. Oh, yeah, it is. And thank you for noting that, Pirate, because I do want to try and keep this shorter than typical so that I can spend less time in post and get that all done. Okay, so, and it's 11. It's 11, maybe 10 for you. It's 11 here. All right, so before we get out of here, first of all, thank all of you for coming and hanging around. It's always fun to just chat. And, this podcast is one of the highlights of my week, so hopefully it's yours. Let's do a little housekeeping stuff before we get out of here. Just a reminder again of the email of the show, which is bardadvice@gmail.com. It also looks like bardadvice. Please send all of your questions, complaints, criticisms, critiques, stories, etc. to bardadvice@gmail.com. As I said, your comments or rather your questions and follow-ups and stuff kind of help keep this engine moving, so you're very much appreciated. If you want to get some merchandise, you can go over to manshorts.com, or you can go to krakendice.com and get yourself some of the Man Shorts dice. If you want to contribute to anything that I'm doing musically, you can do so directly via PayPal, Cash App, or Venmo, all of which are Yazik, Yahzik. Once again, thank you to all of our members, super chatters, patrons, subscribers. Make sure to rate the podcast. Make sure to like the video if you're in here. And we will be back here next week, same Bard time, same Bard channel, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Man Shorts YouTube channel. The audio for this podcast, as always, will be made available tomorrow at 12 p.m. noon Eastern Standard Time. I hope that everybody has a fantastic weekend and an even better week, and we will see you next time.